Okay, now we are in the second half, and well, a little over half actually. And it came to pass that um, their brethren, talking about anti-Nephi-Lehi people, their brethren the Lamanites made preparations for war and came up to the land of Nephi for the purpose of destroying the king and to place another in his stead, and also destroying the people of anti-Nephi-Lehi out of the land. These people, remember, this is the people who are the people of Nehor, profession of Nehor. And Nehor saying, yeah, we believe that God will save all people. Like, we're really inclusive. But they're not. They're willing to kill people if they don't believe what they believe. Sometimes people think that they're, or try to put out that they're inclusive when they aren't. And this is one of those. Now, when the people saw that they were coming against them, they went out to meet them and prostrate themselves before them to the earth, and began to call on the name of the Lord. And thus they were in this attitude when the Lamanites began to fall upon them, and began to slay them with the sword. And thus, without meeting any resistance, they did slay 1,005 of them. And we know that they are blessed, for they have gone to dwell with their God. Now when the Lamanites saw that their brethren would not flee from the sword, neither would they turn aside to the right hand or the left, but that they would lie down and perish, and praise God, even in the very act of perishing under the sword. Now when the Lamanites saw this, they did forbear their slaying, from slaying them. And there were many whose hearts had swollen in them for those of their brethren who had fallen under the sword, for they repented of the things which they had done. And it came to pass that they threw down their weapons of war, and they would not take them again, for they were stung for the murders which they had committed. And they came down, even as their brethren, relying upon the mercies of those whose arms were lifted up to slay them. And it came to pass that the people of God were joined that day by more than the number who had been slain. And those who had been slain were righteous people. Therefore we have no reason to doubt that they were saved. I love the fact that this ends this way. It sounds horrible, thinking over 1,000 people died that day. And that had to be a lot of people. I mean, that had to be a lot of people they knew. Everybody lost someone. But so strong was their faith, it did not matter. Because the next verse is so important to them and should be to us. There was not a wicked man slain among them, but there was more than 1,000 brought to the knowledge of the truth. Thus we see the Lord worketh in many ways to the salvation of his people. That is so important to know, that even if we feel that we are going to our limits, I mean, dying is quite a limit to get to. Abinadi knows that. And so does a lot of other people. So does the people in that Alma was preaching to. Sometimes my brain goes in the city of Malachi. Yeah, I can't remember now. That had to that died because of their faith, and now we're having it here. Yet because of that, more than 1,000 were brought to the knowledge of the truth. We are going to find from this group, the ones here and the ones who survived this attack, they are going to pop up over and over again throughout the rest of Alma. And you're going to see how much influence they have, not only with their people, but so many other people, and so many of the Lamanites that are now, that don't join at this point. Now, the greatest number of those Lamanites who slew so many of the brethren were Amalekites and Ammonites. Any surprise there? I don't think so. The greatest number of whom were after the order of Nehors. What a doctrine to think. If you want to see a wicked doctrine, you go back and read what Nehor was teaching. And you see that even though he says, oh, everybody will be saved, he doesn't show that in his actions, and they don't either. They enforce what they believe with the sword. Now, among those who joined the people of the Lord, there were none who were Amalekites or Ammonites, or who were of the order of Nehor, but they were actual descendants of Laman and Lemuel. And thus we can plainly discern. He doesn't just say we can see, he says discern, that after a people have been once enlightened by the Spirit of God and have had a great knowledge of things pertaining to righteousness, then have fallen away into sin and transgression, they become more hardened, and thus their state becomes worse than though they had never known these things. We have such a contrast. The people of Anti-Nephi-Lehi's and the people that follow the teachings of Nehor, and they are just so polar opposites at this point. So I just want to leave you with a thought that have that gratitude in your heart that King Anti-Nephi-Lehi has, and that the people of Anti-Nephi-Lehi have, that gratitude, and know your blessings that God gives you, and you will